Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of PhotoBiz Live. My name is Danny. I'm part of the PhotoBiz team here, and we're going to be going over Coding 101 today with Jeff P. from the support team. So you guys may have spoken with Jeff whenever you call in to the PhotoBiz Passionate support team or any of the other agents that work here. And Jeff's basically going to be showing you basic coding and how you can use basic HTML coding to enhance your PhotoBiz products. So in addition to getting the opportunity to learn from Jeff today in today's webinar, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So you can submit your questions inside of the questions area in the webinar software. Also, we are going to have a conversation online on Twitter using hashtag PhotoBizLive if you want to follow the conversation on Twitter or leave a comment on Twitter as well. So if at any point during today's webinar you're having any issues hearing Jeff or myself or seeing the screen, please go ahead and use the comment box and let us know, and we'll take care of your issue individually. We're also going to be recording this webinar and placing it online for replay on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/photobiz. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jeff.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I wanted to say thanks to Danny as well as those of you that are participating in today's webinar. As Danny had iterated, basically what we're going to be covering is some simple HTML. I'm not necessarily going to try and turn people into, CSS or Cold Fusion engineers. The idea really here is just to provide you somewhat of a baseline of what's available to you within the various PhotoBiz products as far as coding is concerned. I probably won't get so much into some of the do's and don'ts. I'll kind of touch on them briefly, but what you'll see within the slides will give you an example of what we receive commonly as requests or assistance for support in coding for various types of things, videos, etc. So let's just jump in, and then we'll, like I said, go through the store, Flash HTML, and the blog. So one of the common questions that we get is to add video to your particular website or blog site. It seems to be more of a common element here lately where people are using it more as a virtual opportunity to interface or meet with their client base. I think attributing a face to a particular brand is a bit more intimate than just text, so I find it to be popular from the bio perspective. In addition to that, I also find that clients like yourselves use it for presenting information to your client or customer base, specifically kind of the options or the semantics of a shoot. So basically preparing them for a day in the shoot, what they need to wear, and also showing them some of the interaction that you have with some of your previous clients. So of course many of the forums or platforms that clients like yourself use are YouTube, Vimeo, and Animoto. As some of you know, Animoto as well as Vimeo provides you more of a branded or unbranded opportunity in that basically their logo will not appear within the actual lightbox that the video plays within. So depending upon what you want to achieve branding-wise, I think even with Vimeo and Animoto, their branding is very subtle, so you don't necessarily have to worry about it impeding too much on what you're trying to convey as far as your design element goes. But basically, it works the same across all of those platforms. When you go into that particular video that you plan to make available on your site, what you're going to be copying is the embed code. Now, what the embed code does is it provides you the capability to create what's called the lightbox. And the lightbox is basically what the media plays within. Within our control panel, you can set the criteria so that you can actually see how big or how small you actually want that video to play within. So you can see where the arrows point. Basically, to take advantage of embedding a video within your site, you'll click on Embed. you'll then see that there is iframe code. And if you look closely, there's also some information that deals with the width and height. One of the notations that I'll make about that is you need to make sure that when you create the embedded link on your website, you want to ensure that the parameters that you set for that light box match for that media box or light box, that it matches these two parameters. So the width and the height are important. Otherwise, you're going to have like a white space, basically around your video. So on the Flash HTML side, you'll basically add it by way of an embedded links page. I've also seen it added more as a single item from the drop-down menu. So if, for example, you have weddings that you want to provide as a means of your source of your branding for that aspect of your business, you can create it so that maybe Benny and June is the option from the drop-down list. You would add that as an external link. Within the external link is the option to turn it into an embedded link, and then from there you can set the criteria that you see here. Of course, once you've added the embed code here, you can of course attribute a name, description. Link caption probably isn't used so often, but again, what you want to do is you want to make sure that these two options match the options within the iframe code. That pretty much concludes adding a video to the website. It's pretty simple by virtue. However, if you have any questions about that, you can certainly give us a call and we'll be sure to help you, kind of navigate or step through the process of adding videos. Like I said, I think it's something that's becoming more and more popular. So if you need to see examples of that, you can certainly give us a call and we can show you a few, of course. Another aspect that we get related to branding is adding a favicon. And a favicon is basically a 16 by 16 icon that appears within the browser address bar. It's usually up in the upper left-hand corner. And as you can see here, I use the PhotoBiz favicon to kind of display an example of that. But a lot of times what we get is the question of how do I create a favicon? Now, I know this doesn't necessarily fall within the realm of coding, but it kind of does because it does have something to do with your brand, and oftentimes what's needed, of course, are some dimensions that are attributed to that favicon, which again are the 16 by 16. So what we've come up with and what we provide to clients like yourself is just basically a site to go and create a favicon. So as you can see within favicon.cc, you have the opportunity to create the favicon right within this actual work panel. In addition to that, you also have the opportunity to upload a logo or a design element that you've created as your favicon. What I'll say about this is just to be mindful of the fact that it's going to be displayed in a 16 by 16 box. So anything that's probably intricate in detail probably won't display to the point of your liking. In other words, your client and or customers may not necessarily be able to decipher what specifically that design element is. So you may want something sort of clean, singular, and focused, but again, it will go up in the address bar. The virtues of those from browser to browser, such as Chrome, IE, Firefox, and Safari, all seem to be, fairly consistent as far as that favicon display is concerned. But again, I just wanted to kind of show you this option. Not so much that it's coding, but it's a common question that we get along the lines of coding. So to add that favicon, which will be in the file format .ico, you'll then go to under the settings, under the control panel, under the icon settings, you'll see there's an option for favicon upload. So it would work in the same way as images, the same way as your logo upload. Again, the parameters are already set, so you just want to make sure that you abide by whatever it is that favicon actually creates, which is, of course, that 16 by 16. You'll browse, select the file from your file directory, upload, and then, like I said, you can go out and check your browser. What I usually recommend is refreshing the browser or emptying the cache, because if it doesn't display immediately, typically that's the virtue that may be preventing it from being seen. So just something to be mindful of. Again, this can be accomplished under the control panel, under settings, and then favicon upload. So the next thing that I wanted to touch upon was the splash intro page. And as you can imagine, we get a lot of questions about this, primarily from the standpoint of not only creating the items that you see here, which are really the gateway links into the various products that you're using for your brand, but also a bit more embellishment as far as anything that you're using externally or outside of PhotoBiz, which can be done through these items as well. But part of what we find is that, again, with clients using video more and more as part of their branding, they're wanting to incorporate that more at kind of the landing page level. So what I wanted to show you was some simple coding that can be done from the splash intro page perspective. So in this example, what I've done is I've showed you basically the code that you could basically include within the footer text section under the splash intro page. So that's the only place that code will be accepted and be able to be displayed in its true virtue. So anything from Facebook or social media like buttons to association tags. You can see here I used social media buttons as part of the criteria for what I created on my splash intro page. What you see here as far as the layout is concerned is another virtue of coding, and that's tabling. I don't necessarily recommend that all the time, because whenever you're going to add another social media button, basically what you're having to do is crack open that table, create another cell for that social media icon to go within, and then it's kind of playing with the padding and so on and so forth. What I just wanted to show was just an example of how tabling worked. In addition to that, here of course is a video that again can be displayed on the splash intro page. Up at the top, it's a bit subtle, so I took out the words that would basically note what this is specifically. It's Google Translate. So Google Translator allows you to embed a translator on your site. I do not recommend it so much on the Flash side because basically what it does is it pushes the header or the logo down a bit, so the space between the bottom of the translator and the actual top of the actual window may have some space in it, of course, that you really don't have any control over. Taking the Google Translator words or terminology out of it does create a shorter margin. But again, I think it's, like I said, it's more of a challenge internally on the website pages than it is here on the splash intro page. So it probably doesn't look great, but like I said, I just wanted to provide you all an example of what's capable. Another thing that, like I said, is part of this is association tags, but another aspect is adding sitemap information. So particularly for those that are working, pretty aggressively on their SEO, a lot of what will be advised to you either by SEO specialists, whether it's ourselves or an external company that you're using, is to provide information SEO-wise first and foremost on that initial landing page. Another benefit that you'd have, and many clients use it, of course, is what's called a sitemap. And basically what the sitemap does is it creates clickable links on that actual splash intro page that will take you to some portion of the website. Whether it's an information page or a gallery page, it kind of falls within that logic. Links, as you may or may not know, are good for SEO purposes, particularly if they're deep links. And they're also another means of kind of laying the breadcrumb trail. So you're trying to lead your client and or customer from one point of your website to the other. What that, of course, will do will increase the time on page or time within website, and it'll also show the tracking of where they're going specifically within your website. So within that splash intro page, I wanted to show you some of the common code options or elements. So what you see here is basically adding a like box, a Facebook like box to your splash intro page. Very, very popular. I find it being used more and more often with clients. The Facebook like button, the subtle one, tends to be used, but you also have the opportunity, and I think you can kind of see this in the background, where it's really more of the like box with the news feed in it, including some of those fans that you may have with your particular business or studio. So again, I just wanted to show you what some of the code looks like. Again, what you want to select when you're using Facebook is the iframe code. The iframe code is also going to dictate the size, much like Vimeo, YouTube, and Animoto. There's going to be a size preference in there, so if you want it to appear larger or smaller or wider or skinnier, then you'll need to change the parameters within this code string before you embed it within the actual site. And so basically this is the code string for the embed video that I have below. So I thought it'd be a little bit more information for you to take a look at. The other thing that I did here, which kind of embodies the virtue of the sitemap option that I talked about, that's basically what the click here for lifestyle gallery is supposed to be showing a sample of. So again, you can kind of make this whatever you want, whether, like I said, it's multiple links or maybe just single links. I also recommend putting contact information there because if for whatever reason someone comes to your site and maybe little Susie fell and skinned her knees and they don't have an opportunity to go on your site, maybe the last thing that they note on the site would be your phone number. And then of course they can pick up the phone and give you a call. The other thing that's depicted here is the actual font size. So you can control the font size of links. However, these elements here, which are the tags associated with your actual gateway links, are not necessarily editable, or they're not editable. So in other words, you can't make these larger. What we suggest in those situations is embed the actual text for that button in the actual image and upload that. I think that that makes a much more better branded presentation than attempting to work within the parameters of what's here as far as the actual link names are concerned. But again, that's an option because I've seen some that look great with the link options and no information on the actual images. What I was going to do was just reference my colleague Jen's presentation about perfecting your splash intro page. It's an awesome webinar. It goes into greater detail of what I've covered so far, but it even surpasses that because I think it covers in greater detail more of the virtues, particularly around design. I just basically was covering more of a coding perspective than anything else. So one of the things that I think a lot of clients are curious about, particularly when you're talking about code, and again, not under the premise of becoming, a coding expert or a cold fusion engineer, but really more what are some of the fundamental components of code. So what I wanted to share with you are some of the basic aspects of coding, and as most of you know, the complexity is pretty far-reaching as far as the options are concerned. The BR basically denotes a line break, so if you have text or information or a particular widget or a video that you're displaying either above or below text, you can put in what's called a line break, and what the line break will actually do is create a space in between the item that's before it as well as the item that you're now adding to, that post content section. The P basically defines a paragraph, and what you'll notice about this is that you'll need to have an open tag and a closed tag so that basically anything between the two tags will basically do whatever the parameter of that tag dictates. So a break would be the BR first, the text or information that you want to show up within the break, and then the open bracket / BR close bracket. This particular piece of code is very, very popular, obviously because of the virtue of what it does. So rather than putting information that appears kind of in this format, the www.photobiz.com, it's better branded to have something that would basically note the action that you want your client and or customer to take, which is, in this case, visit PhotoBiz. So the A tag is basically an anchor. So what you're doing with the anchor is you're basically dictating what am I referencing, which is the URL, and then what is it that you want to show up as the action item or the link, which in this case is visit PhotoBiz. Again, like all the other tags, you're going to have an anchor, and then of course you're going to have a close tag, and then of course anything within those two parameters are going to appear. And so basically what appears to the client or customer is visit PhotoBiz, not the actual code. Center is basically pretty self-explanatory. It aligns the text within the center of the two tags on the page. The other thing that it does is it allows you to have better control over the layout of certain coded elements. I highly recommend this on the splash intro page, even though it does it by virtue. Basically, any tags that you add to the splash intro page are going to be center aligned justified. So that's ideal because if you want to remove an element or add it back, it's fairly easy, and you don't necessarily have to worry about div tags, which is the next option, because div tags basically dictate, I want this particular item to appear in a certain portion of the page. It can be a bit tricky, particularly when you're talking about clients or customers that are accessing your site via different devices. So the virtues of div tags can be different from a desktop to an iPad to a mobile device like a phone, as well as a Mac. So I generally don't necessarily recommend using a div tag unless it's part of the code that you're utilizing for a widget or something to that effect, because like I said, what you'll find is that really does anchor that particular element to that page, and if the page is basically sized dynamically based on the device that's utilizing it, it can either appear behind your logo or appear behind the link items that you have on the splash intro page, in that kind of example. Font size is pretty self-explanatory. It provides you the capability not only to note the actual size of the font, but you can actually dictate color. So you probably want to use a more common or web standard term for your color. Pantones usually don't convey, so it's more or less a single item term: black, orange, red, green. And then of course the text that you want to appear within that particular color. Now font size deals with the actual size of the font. So as I displayed on the splash intro page, I think I had set this to 6. So you can basically play within the parameters of 0 to ridiculous to achieve what you want font size, and then like I said, you can also note the color preference. Hex code is another element that works. So maybe you do have a Pantone and you can't necessarily note it in a narrative sense, but you can use a hex code. And then the H1 titles, basically these are other anchor tags, but again, this really deals more with headings for particular information, and you can basically run the gamut again from very acute to quite ridiculous. So H1 up to H10 will probably give you the best bang for your buck as far as the actual title text is concerned on a particular page. So I also wanted to cover not only the Flash HTML side, but also to show you the store site layout, just to kind of give you an example of what you can achieve there. The difference really being is that the store layouts are really a bit more conducive to providing coded capabilities or options, primarily because under the Details tab for, let's say, the home page or a Marquee Plus page, you have a specific area that's actually created specifically for HTML content. So in that case, you're not necessarily having to work against or in conjunction with the virtues of a template-based system. So you do have greater flexibility as far as your actual coding options go. And as you can see here, I basically created 2 sets of code. Again, you want to create some separation, whether that's by way of a line break or a paragraph break between the 2 code strings, because if you blend them, then basically the virtue of what you want will not be displayed. The other thing that you have an opportunity to do on like an information page, particularly in the store site, is the text content section has what's called an HTML editor. And so if you click on this icon, kind of right here, if you can barely see that, but this icon will basically open up a panel that will actually show you the HTML code associated with whatever it is that you put in this text content section. So anything from bullet pointing to formatting to underlining and bold, all of that would be displayed within that HTML text editor. And so here is kind of an example of what you may find within that text editor or that site HTML source editor. So here you can see kind of what I put in there as far as information goes. You can see, of course, the font size. In this case is medium, and that's based upon the parameters that are set within our system, so that's not something that I formally typed in. However, you can go in and edit this information too. So if you find that you want a particular item, like in this case, I embedded a widget for weather onto my site or onto that content page. So if I don't necessarily like the dimension in which it appears, there's not a whole lot that you can do from the perspective of changing it on the actual content page itself. You're going to actually open up the HTML editor and make your changes there, of course update, and then that will display in the desired format when you go to preview it. Same is true for your text options. So again, if you have anything in the way of bold or underline or bullet pointed, all that would be reflected here. Basically what I wanted to provide you was just a high level of what pages can actually accept code. So this deals with, the store site pretty much. The Marquee and Marquee Plus pages within the store/blog site are great, I think, as far as overall design element, providing action items, as well as coding. You can get a whole lot of bang for your buck utilizing either a Marquee or a Marquee Plus page. I find even that the Marquee Plus page is even sort of surpassing the Marquee page only because of the virtue of all the various layouts that you have. And really when you're talking about creating action items, you're really talking about a coded element that would create the appropriate action. In other words, you create a box that says events. When they click on it, it takes them right to the events page. So these, again, are the pages that you can add text to or coding to. Generally speaking, these have sections that deal specifically with HTML, or they're more by virtue of what they do to accept code. In these cases, it's probably more embed code than anything else, whether that's a video or a form or something to that effect. The other thing that I wanted to show you too was that same option that works not only in the store but also in the blog. So I even took it down a level right into the actual blog post itself. So what we're finding in the way of support calls is that many clients are looking to use, again, the option for adding video. So they actually want to embed it within the actual blog post, which you can do. So basically what you're doing, and I recommend this route probably than attempting to add it here, although you can put the video within that text content section. It will accept the code, and then like I said, you can look more at the HTML source editor to make any corrections or adjustments that you want. Again, I don't find this used that often, but it is of particular interest, so I thought I would display, basically how that virtue works. So this is really more a depiction of the actual page. So when you're going to create a post, you go to edit the post. Under the details tab, you'll of course see the post settings itself. And then underneath the post tag section, of course, is post content, which again, you have the edit HTML source option here. And of course, this is what the actual source editor looks like. Widgets is another item that's become quite popular, not so much that they're new to the virtual world, but more so that people are using them from a social media platform, or I should say more with PhotoBiz clients. So the virtue of what's been created in the store provides you greater capability to do that. And in fact, we've actually created an option for widgets. So widgets are basically, I would say, probably more extensive than an actual icon. It actually provides you greater dimension as far as the actual control of what's displayed. It also holds a greater formatting aspect attributed to it. And so I wanted to show you kind of what a widget looked like, but also how it worked. So when you're adding code for a widget, of course, the widget is going to originate from whatever source that you're attempting to create within your site. So whether that's Pinterest, or if you're using, Facebook, again, for the newsfeed plugin, Twitter. I mean, there are all kinds of different opportunities out there as far as widget goes. When you're adding the widget type, which again, this is basically on, a blog page, so a marquee page or home page. Under the Details tab, you'll see that there are options there for a banner image, widgets. You also have the opportunity to select your layout, which will also dictate where these other items appear. But when you select the widget type, the archive is really more for any posts that you have that are before the current day's post. So that's probably more in the case of you have a number of years of posts available and you want to create somewhat of an archive, which will make it a little easier for folks to navigate through. The tags are specific words that you attribute to those blog posts. Those appear, again, based on the orientation or the site layout, those elements that are associated with that particular blog post. So weddings, couples, etc. What those tags do is provide action items for your clients or users that are accessing your site, and what it will do is show them the content relevant to those particular terms. But the HTML is basically what you want to use, of course, when you select or want to embed a widget within your site. Ideally, you want to ensure that whatever widget you're creating would also be encompassed within the actual page virtue. So rather than creating a widget and finding that the widget actually runs off the page, you either want to adjust the parameters of the widget here, or you want to adjust the actual height of the page itself that you're adding the widget to. So here's an example of my demo account. So you can see that I have my blog posts here, menu items at the top, of course. Again, this is all dictated by the site layout. But here's a depiction of the actual code that's attributed for that widget, and that's basically the way it would appear based on the code or embed code or iframe code that I used for creating that specific widget. Now again, if I had anything in the way of archives, those items would appear here. Again, tags is just another single itemed list of terms that are used within the actual blog post. So I just wanted to, again, give you a visualization of how the widgets actually work. And of course, as you've seen before, you can add more than one widget if you'd like. And like I said, the site layout will actually dictate what specifically is displayed on the page. One request that I know we've received, I'm not sure if development or design is going to be working on it in the immediate future or sometime in the distant future, but we understand that there are many clients who want more of kind of what ProPhoto blogs have, which are smaller widgets that appear within rows or columns, if you will. So maybe you have two levels of widgets that appear, and they appear more as a thumbnail. So I know that I personally have submitted it to the Idea Bank for consideration. Again, I'm not sure when specifically that may be done, but it is a point of interest for many clients like yourself. Another element that's associated with code, sort of, kind of, I sort of perceived it as code because sometimes we have to go in and fix this from time to time, particularly if the code strings are blended and you're using something like Webmaster Tools and Analytics. You still need to create some delineation or some separation between the two code strings. They are unique in and of themselves based on what you're trying to accomplish, either submission of your website and sitemap via Webmaster Tools or really to create the tracking vehicle via Google Analytics. So what I wanted to show you here was basically the options that you had both on the Flash HTML side and on the blog/store side. So on the Flash HTML side, under the settings icon, there's a section labeled Visit Counter, which you can see here. The Visit Counter is basically where any of the code that's related to Webmaster Tools, Google Analytics, stat counters tend to be quite popular. Any code that's associated with tracking something on your site is going to be added within this Visit Counter section. I do not recommend trying to embed code on a content page on the Flash HTML sites or within an actual field for text that you want to make either larger or smaller or bold or underline. What oftentimes happens is when you add that code, it will lock the actual template up. So in other words, when you go and try and edit that field, it's not available to you. So what we have to do then is send it up to development. They have to crack open the template, remove the piece of code, put it back together again. So again, if you're going to be adding code, you want to do that, of course, in the Visit Counter section. And you can add as much code, of course, as you'd like. With Webmaster Tools as well as Google Analytics, what you want to do is you want to add the code first. It then requires you to publish your website because basically you're putting that code on the front end of your site so that it can be picked up. And then from that point, you want to go back into either Webmaster Tools or Analytics and then verify the site. You should get the confirmation back that it's successfully gathered the data or recognized that your site's been successfully submitted. And then same option here, but this is more on the blog/store site. There's actually a visit counter option under the icon search engines. So it's a little different than Flash HTML, but it kind of makes sense. So it falls in the logic of anything that's happening in the way of activity on my site, particularly SEO information, that's all going to go within this specific section of the store/blog. I wanted to share some of the common resources that we use. Some of this has just been from my own experiences of basically creating code in my past lives as well as assisting clients like yourselves here. And it really depends upon the complexity of what's attempting to be achieved. So there are some that do a better job of assisting you in the development of that code or actually creating code for you. One that's particularly popular with clients that I work with in the UK as well as in Australia and New Zealand are the 24-hour HTML cafe.com. So what this does is it basically allows you to select from the options here that basically will provide you somewhat of an indicator or a table of the options that are available. So what it does is, I think what it will provide you with, again, will just be an index or a summary or a table of contents of what's available to you. The other thing that you have available is Quackit, and Quackit is actually something that provides you the capability to create code within your actual site. So for those of you that are maybe not technically savvy or not necessarily comfortable with creating code, Quackit is probably the most commonly used resource, and it's generally where I point folks to, apart from W3 Schools, which is here. W3 Schools is a bit more involved. I think it probably lends more to probably those that are probably comfortable with code, know specifically what they want to accomplish, and understand the virtues of some of those tags that are associated with the code that they want to create. I use this with a lot of clients that have a great comfort level with creating code. A lot of times I've learned a lot from clients that I've worked with. PowerVision 360, I think, is a great example of some of the virtues that can be accomplished with coding, as long as you're comfortable and savvy with what it is that you want to accomplish from a design point. The other is html.am. This one, I have to say, is fairly new to me. I haven't used it that much, but from what I understand in talking to a gentleman in South Africa, it's one that he uses quite often. I did make him aware of some of the other ones that you see listed here. So again, I point back to these resources because a lot of times they're the tools that we use basically just to reinforce whatever it is that we've actually created on the site or we're attempting to create. So it's really more of a platform to ensure whatever groundwork that we're laying as far as that code is concerned is in keeping with web standards. It's not going to basically interrupt or break the virtue of the template that you're working within or the actual section of the template that you're working within. So again, I highly recommend these. Of course, when the webinar is made available, you can see these a little closer as far as the actual URLs are concerned. But again, I think the two most commonly used are Quackit and W3 Schools. I think that they're pretty user-friendly, fairly intuitive. But the other thing that I would highly recommend is just give us a call, particularly when you're trying to accomplish something. It may be something that we can accomplish with some simple coding. It maybe doesn't necessarily have to be complex in nature. It may be something that we may be able to use just by virtue of what's already available within the actual site, whether that's an embedded link or an external link or what have you. another option that I didn't necessarily depict here, but is another element that's commonly used, and that is embedding PDFs within the actual site. There's an option in the upper right-hand corner of the control panel for music/PDF. And what that allows you to do is to upload a PDF document to your site, but it gives you greater control, particularly if you have a branded document, like your logo appears at the top, and there's a particular layout or flow to that particular page or document that you want to share with your customer or client base. I think that that does a better job sometimes than trying to create the format that you want within the text content section. And I really mean that more so on the Flash HTML side. You have greater flexibility, of course, on the blog slash store side. But in the cases of trying to create a certain format, and I see this more commonly with pricing or packages that aren't necessarily shown or displayed within the actual store site, it's really more on the Flash HTML side. What I suggest to clients that are utilizing that is just use a PDF version. Again, what that does is it maintains the format, it maintains your branding, but also if you have a great deal of information, whether that's terms or conditions, reps and warranties, all of that information, if that's part of the actual contractual process for those that are doing commercial or models or anything like that, it provides them the ability to not only view that information but also to print it off. So if they look sitting at the dinner table or at the computer, or if they're going to the park to walk the dog, they can kind of sit down and look at that document, absorb whatever information is available on it, and of course, share that with family members or friends. So I highly recommend doing that too, because it's not something that I displayed in the PowerPoint, but I think it's something that may not necessarily be used as often, but I think has a great impact as far as your branding is concerned, and creating greater flexibility as far as what you're placing in the hand of your client and or customers when it comes to information about what you provide and the pricing associated to that service. Lastly, I wanted to cover the means of being able to reach the passionate support team. I would love to stress that, and I can't stress this enough, we are here to help facilitate issue resolution. So I know many of you probably don't have a problem calling and calling often. We greatly appreciate that, or I should say I do. But I think also what you may or may not realize is it also provides us an opportunity to gain greater knowledge of what's happening within the industry, what's happening within your particular business. Personally, I'm a business major, so I'm always interested in the facets of what are created within business models and then how to make that virtual on the web. So part of what I'm basically doing by way of this particular slide is providing you information about how to reach us. So of course you can reach us toll free at the number on the screen. We're available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. until 8 p.m. and that's Eastern Standard Time. We also work the ticket queue on Sunday. So the phones are not necessarily live, but if you send in a support ticket from Friday 8:01 p.m. up until Monday morning, we'll respond to those tickets within that time frame. If it requires a call, of course we'll call you. Now if you send in a support ticket, if it's a coding issue, I do not recommend putting the coding in the actual support ticket. A lot of times what happens is some of the code elements come through, others don't. The actual ticket system is based on HTML code. So in some cases what our ticket system does is rather than have it break the system, it will just strip the code out. So a lot of times what we get is a partial message of what it is that you want to accomplish. If you've had any interaction with a particular support rep, what I would recommend is sending the information directly to them, or basically including within the support ticket, I would like to add a widget to my blog site. Can someone contact me or provide me some instructions on how to accomplish that? A couple of other forms that I think are great for communicating, not necessarily about coding, but also from a business perspective. I think that some of what can be gleaned from some of these platforms is shortening the learning curve or the damage control that can be incurred from doing business. A lot of what I've seen on the community forum as well as Facebook is these great mentoring opportunities or brainstorming or knowledge sharing. And so we highly advocate doing that as well because we also check those forums. So go out and visit those, particularly, like I said, if you have questions or comments that you want to place, we go out and check those every day, all day. So those platforms are available to you. The community forum really doesn't require anything special. You can use the login credentials that you would use to access the control panel, to access the community forum. There is a wealth of information across all of these platforms, so I can't stress enough how much of a valuable resource this can be for you. And of course, you can also go and check out our blog. All of these forums basically contain information about what we're releasing as far as improvements to applications or products, things that are going to be newly introduced, and just general information about photographers or business folks that we're featuring for the month. And like I said, some of the new options that we're making available on either the Flash, HTML, or blog sites. So that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to cover from a coding perspective. Again, I didn't want to get into too much detail. There are greater complexities associated with that and what you can accomplish within our system. So even though it's template-based, some of the discussions that we have with clients is just to make them aware it's not a custom site, it's more customizable. So it's a template-based system, but there are virtues of it that you can tweak and refine to be, greater encompass your branding or what you want to achieve functionally. So again, just give us a call or send in a support ticket and we'd be happy to assist you in any way possible. So I appreciate the opportunity for being able to speak to you all about this. As you can tell, I'm a geek, so I really enjoy talking about this. You can, of course, call and ask for me. I'm the only Jeffrey on support, but there are a lot of incredible people here that have the same technical prowess that I do or greater. So I highly recommend, again, calling us often. Don't allowing yourself to be frustrated or puzzled by what's within the control panel. That's what we're here for, and we strongly, strongly suggest using us as a resource, not only for your technical needs, but also for your business needs as well. So with that, basically what we'll do is we'll look at some of the questions that are available or that have come into the actual webinar or to the forum. So we'll try and get through as many of these as we can. Okay. So a couple of the questions that we got pertain to creating a link on the Flash HTML website and linking it to the store site. So Emma, I appreciate the question. What I'll do is create a ticket for that, as well as for the other question that you have that relates to linking to Facebook pages. So we will have a web consultant contact you specifically to talk in greater detail about that, but I do appreciate the question. I also appreciate the great feedback. I really appreciate that. Looks like Joanna offered up a question regarding PDF embedding. Let's see. Great idea, but was a bit confused as to how would display on the site. Okay. And we'll also share that one with you too, Joanna. So we'll just give you a call, create a support ticket, and have one of the web consultants call you. So I think that pretty much concludes the questions that we have. Again, if you have any other questions, give us a call, email us if you've had conversations with other representatives, or of course send in a support ticket. Again, those forums that we have are open and available to you specifically. we go out and check them or monitor them, on a daily basis. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you all again about Coding 101 and for PhotoBiz. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great afternoon.